So we've got an update on the situation in the Sudan. On Thursday, you may have heard that the military stepped in and staged a coup against the long-standing leader, Omar al-Bashir. Bashir had been in power for 30 years or so, and people had been protesting against his leadership for the last few months over, domestic concerns, food prices, things like that. But the goal of the protests ultimately seemed to be democratization of the country, not just regime change. This was evident because after the coup, the leader of the coup, the defense minister, and the rest of the junta announced that there would be a 2-year period of military rule and then eventually followed by elections, so they say. Now, this in no way quelled the protesters, however, because this is not what they wanted. Some of them, the interviews that I saw, they were basically saying that, no, we're not going to trade one dictator for another, we're going to keep protesting. And so they viewed correctly, in my mind, that this new defense minister who just took over was probably going to become the next Bashir, because, of course, that's how Bashir himself got into power. He led a coup against the previous leader. So after this new wannabe dictator announced that there was going to be a curfew now from until further notice, the protesters were supposed to disperse when nightfall came. However, the curfew came to pass, and everyone stayed in the streets and continued to protest. And this was a big sign of assurance that they were not going to pay attention to his decrees and that they in no way recognized his legitimacy. So after being thoroughly emasculated in this way, the defense minister resigned from the coup and essentially appointed a new general to lead it. A lieutenant general, to be exact, and this guy was much more, shall we say, cooperative with respect to the demands of the protesters. Instead of stating outright that there would be 2 years of military rule as the sort of the minimum, and then there might be elections afterwards, he said military rule could last as long as 2 years, but probably less. So there's a minor change in wording, but a huge change in direction. In fact, the junta leader even went so far as to say that there could be elections next month if there's stability until then. But of course, having snap elections like that doesn't typically benefit these disorganized opposition groups. That will typically benefit whoever is currently well organized, that being the ruling party. So I'm not so sure that the protesters would want elections next month. But this is still a big reversal from indeterminate military rule for at least 2 years. The junta also said that in between now and the elections time, they're going to want to have continued dialogue between themselves and the various political factions in the country, not only the protesters, but the ruling party and all that, and try and act as independent mediators. They seem that they want to pull from all sides and feel like they have a national unity government. In fact, the orientation now that, or the stance that the junta is currently taking since the first leader stepped down, now reminds me quite a bit of the junta that took power after the Carnation Revolution in Portugal. Very conciliatory and humble, trying to just hand over power as quickly as possible. Of course, things didn't exactly go perfect for the Portuguese after their junta handed over power to the people. They became quickly mired in economic stagnation, and they really haven't progressed much since then. However, perhaps in the case of the Sudanese, that stability, even if it is stagnation, may be better than the status quo, especially considering that primarily right now people are most concerned with just getting bread. I believe that was how these protests all got started, was over the price of bread. Now, with respect to their ousted president, Omar al Bashir, the junta says they have no plans of extraditing him to The Hague to be tried on war crimes and genocide. However, they do plan to prosecute him themselves, which is more than I can say for the United States, who not only will refuse to allow the ICC, the International Criminal Court, to investigate their leaders, but we certainly haven't tried any of ours for the various war crimes that have been perpetrated by U.S. administrations. So I'll give the Sudanese junta credit for that at least. But anyway, if you gained anything of value from this video, I'd certainly appreciate you giving it a like. And also, if you want to stay tuned for more, go ahead and click the subscribe button and click that bell, because I do upload every day, and I focus mostly on foreign policy news that Doesn't get a lot of coverage in the mainstream media, but I'll also hit some domestic U.S. political and economic news. So I'll see you folks tomorrow.